Hey folks, here at OS Reviews. You're watching our video first look and hands-on review of the Vivitar ViviCam X024. This is a low-cost digital point-and-shoot camera that retails for under 70 bucks, although the street price is closer to 30 if you look on Amazon or eBay. So this is a very low-cost camera. It doesn't even have an optical sensor that extends, zoom. It does have digital zoom up to 4 times, which is proudly advertised on the front, and otherwise the build is actually not as bad as some other low-cost cameras that we've seen from Vivitar. There's actually a brushed aluminum build that makes it feel a bit more premium. The quality is okay at this price, but it should be more of a backup camera or something to give to a kid rather than what you want to take super seriously and use in the day in and day out. But it does perform decently for this price, I would say. Taking a closer look at the hardware first, we have a xenon flash on the top. It takes actually 3 AAA batteries underneath the door on the bottom. Although it's a plus that you can swap out these batteries on the go, the downside is it drains power a little fast for our tastes, although you can always opt for rechargeable AAA batteries for extending your cost over time. There's also a self-portrait or vanity mirror that allows you to see your face if you're pointing at yourself and taking images. The main lens here isn't protected by a cap or anything, but you can see some basic info about it on the chrome here, which is made out of plastic. There's also access to HD 720p video recording if you want to use it as a camcorder. It has a 2.4-inch TFT LCD panel on the back that is of okay quality, but it's not super pixel dense, and it features a 10.1 megapixel sensor. So the resolution count is probably the most impressive thing about this cam, especially at under 30 bucks. So you can actually get a nice amount of detail if you have enough light and your hands are steady enough, and you can zoom all the way into your images and they look okay. But it is a fixed focus camera, so it doesn't support autofocus, and images as a whole aren't super impressive. The front here also features a small speaker. Aside from the brushed finish, the top is made out of plastic and resembles a pretty traditional layout with a camera shutter key. So it's a one press key, not two stage, since it isn't autofocus. And there's a dedicated power on off switch. There's also a lanyard strap on the side, and on the bottom we have access to a traditional tripod mount in addition to a mini USB port, which you can use to connect to a computer for transferring files. And the side features a hot swappable full-sized SD card slot that supports cards up to 64 gigabytes in our testing. And there's also a part that you can switch here to go through macro or micro lens modes. Since again it is a fixed focus camera, you have to adjust this yourself if you want to capture close-up shots or landscape shots. The back here features the aforementioned 2.4-inch TFT LCD screen, which is flush, but it's just plastic here. There is this grip for your hand that makes it feel a little bit stronger when you are taking images. And there's a 4-way navigation toggle with a menu key, flash. You can also change the self-timer. You can also go through various modes such as video recording, playback, settings, and there's also manual zoom controls on the top. So the layout and the build here is pretty typical for a low-cost camera, and all in all, it suffices and works without too many problems. The interface here is pretty simple. You have access to, if you're taking images or recording video, it tells you the resolution, whether the flash is on, off, red eye reduction, or auto mode, and there's also the status of the macro or micro lens. Finally, on the side here, there's a zoom bar that tells you how much you're zoomed all the way in. You can tap and hold to continuously zoom in, and that's actually pretty smooth in our testing. So again, you can zoom up to 4 times, but that degrades the quality of the image if you want to look for detail in your shots. Down below here we have some ISO information, whether the image stabilization function is on. So it uses digital image stabilization. It's not optical, but it does tend to help a little bit if you have good lighting, and if you are slightly shaky and you're zoomed in, your shots still come out reasonably looking. However, in under low light environments, it doesn't work quite as well, and it's nowhere near as polished as optical image stabilization. Next, there's a self-portrait mode that finds faces automatically and frames that. There's also access to the memory if you're recording on SD card, or the internal memory, which is only able to capture 2 or 3 images. So if we take a quick look at some sample images that I took by tapping on the power key once, so you can see now we're in video recording mode before going into the playback settings. One problem that we did find with this camera is the flash is a little inconsistent. So sometimes it overexposes your shots, as you can see here, but in other times it makes it still quite dim. Sometimes your indoor shots will have a slight tendency to look a little orangey and washed out, but all in all, it's not terrible, and you can see that in well-lit environments, the object is pretty nicely captured, I would say, especially for a low-cost budget camera. Some other sample shots that I took with this, you can see up close, so not bad, especially if you have good lighting, but indoors, especially with all the lights off, and this was just using the flash only as a source of lighting, you can see that the image quality can be a little bit inconsistent. You can see that the display quality is okay. I would say that it's reasonably sharp looking, although it's an LCD, so viewing angles aren't outstanding, but it's definitely good enough to view back your images and recorded video content directly without having to load them back onto a computer every time. So decent enough, I would say, not the most accurate in terms of color reproduction, but the details are there, and for the most part, you do have a number of different modes that you can play around with. So going back into our image taking mode here, if I tap on the menu button once, that's where I can cycle through this carousel of features from image size, anti-shake, face detection, smile capturing. So if it detects your smile, then it will capture a shot automatically, continuous shot, self-timer, ISO, white balance, stuff like that, night scenery modes, and there's also some additional kind of filters that you can apply for fun. And that's essentially it. The video recording quality, I would say, is worse than the image quality just because it even though it records up to 720p quality, the microphone isn't super great. And again, it uses digital image stabilization. So if your hands are kind of shaky, the quality doesn't turn out very good. And also because the field of view of the lens is actually quite narrow, it doesn't create the most beautiful effect. In fact, I think that most smartphones these days, especially with mid-tier and flagship phones, can reproduce shots that are better in quality than this. So at the end of the day, I have to say that with the Vivitar Vivicam X024, it's not a bad camera at all, but I wouldn't say it's a great one either. If you're looking for a low-cost point-and-shoot, this will suffice, but its biggest downside is that it is a fixed-focus camera as opposed to being autofocus. That would have really helped. The wealth of modes are nice, and I like to see that they actually use some aluminum accents as opposed to being all plastic, and the screen is actually a little bit better than I originally anticipated. With that being said, I would say that if you already have a pretty decent camera on your smartphone, this isn't something you should necessarily consider since it really isn't a huge step up. So you can check out more details in our article coming out soon, but for now, this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.